Righty. Okay, so a couple of changes. First of all, yeah, I know I kind of snuck one in on y'all the other day in terms of saying that chapter 10 assignment was due on Sunday, but we've had some changes. Obviously, school's going to be out a little longer than what I had originally anticipated. So we're going to have to just try to kind of stay on schedule as much as we can. And with that said, I'm not going to change the due date for the chapter 9, but all the other assignments, we're going to have to kind of do them as a weekly basis kind of deal. So any questions about that or anything? Yeah, Chance, mute your mic if you don't mind, please. Thank you. I'm about to say, I keep hearing my voice twice and it just sounds really bad. To me, at least, anyway. I can't stand the sound of my own voice. The discussion postings as well. Just give me a nod of the head. Yes, y'all found that okay. At least, hopefully, those of you who've looked for it. Okay, good deal. All right, there we have it. Okay, so chapter 11. This is where we get into oligopolies. No, it is not pronounced oligopoly. All right, even though you can, I guess, if you really want to. Who cares, right? Okay, so oligopoly, just like an oligarchy. The term oli just means a few. So what we're going to see is the same market structure. We're going to have a few large firms that are going to be in control of the entire market. Again, same thing as the other day too. If y'all have questions, just unmute your mic and interrupt me. I can't see your faces while I'm on this screen. So just do that, okay, for me. But it says the learning outcomes, whatever, just understand what an oligopoly is. Who cares, right? That's all we're worried about for now. Okay, so this is what I told y'all the other day, is that 90%, I would say in the United States, especially of the markets, fall somewhere either between an oligopoly or a monopolistic competition, right? That's where you're going to see the majority of them. You're not going to see in the United States very many pure competition markets, and you're not going to see very many that are a pure monopoly. So like I said, you're going to see some combination of the one we're talking about today and the one that we'll talk about next time, or we may get to it today too. It just depends. But whenever it's talking about this down here, right, behavior in perfectly competitive markets is more complicated than a monopoly because it involves a number of decision makers rather than only one. So you can kind of think of this like whenever we're talking about the power company the other day, right, and how they can make decisions on their own, right? Well, because they're the only ones who make decisions. But whenever we start talking about an oligopoly, decisions can be a little bit slower, and you'll kind of see why that may be the case. And decisions can be a little more difficult because, well, pretty much whatever one person in an oligopoly does, everybody has to follow suit, right? And that'll make a little more sense as we get moving through this. Okay, so what is an oligopoly? Well, guess what? We've already explained. It's a market structure when there's a few large firms that control pretty much all the market supply. Does it mean they control 100% of it? No, it does not. But they control a good majority of it. I believe the book actually goes into the description to tell you exactly what percentage the small company or the large companies have to control for it to be considered an oligopoly, right? But anyway, moving on. Okay, so imperfect competition, all that means is that we don't have perfect competition, right? Anytime you see, and like we could actually add to this, right? And we could say that anytime the firm has control over price, then you are dealing with imperfect competition. That's pretty much one of the major characteristics of imperfect competition, is the fact that the individual firm can control their own price, right? So like, again, I'm just going to type here for the sake of it, right? Like whenever we're dealing with the corn farmer, right? Well, the corn farmer had no control, right? But if we're dealing with, and one of the examples that these notes uses is like a razor manufacturers. I have no idea how to spell that. I got it right. Yay. Right? They have a large control over price, right? Because, I mean, if you really think about this, I mean, it's a thin piece of steel that's like that big, and it's inside of a little cartridge, but yet they cost like $25 for a pack of razors. Right? I mean, there's no way there's that much technology, but they do have control of the price, and well, you can't really get mad about it. Everybody good so far? Again, I can't see y'all, so just speak up if you got questions. Cool beans, moving on. All right, so what determines the amount of market power that somebody's going to have? And these are just all of the barriers to entry that we have. Okay, so what's going to determine the market power? So the determinants of market power, and we should say include, well, the market power, and I don't like how these notes are, of the individual firm, right, includes this, right? So the number of producers, well, how many competitors do you have, right? How much competition do you have? Right here, okay, and then the size of each firm. Well, how big is it, right? Basically, you could say almost right here, are you competing with Walmart or mom and pop, right? The barriers to entry, this is just, again, the same exact thing. What's stopping you? And then the availability of substitutes, right? Well, how close, and you could even say, how closely related are these substitutes? Good Lord. Good. It's good. No, I can't type today, guys. I'm so sorry. All right. So not only the availability, but how closely related are they? So like whenever you think about Gillette and Schick and all the other razor companies that are out there, they're pretty closely related, right? So as a result, it's going to kind of complicate things a little bit, right? But then, I mean, it's also going to kind of make it to where they can't compete over price. And you'll see that here in a minute once we actually get to that part of it. And we'll start talking about that some. Okay, but everybody good with this? So in terms of an oligopoly, well, number of producers, there's going to be a few, right? The size of each firm is going to be huge, right? The barriers to entry are going to be very large. Right, and then the availability of substitute goods. Well, what you're going to see is that for the most part, in most true oligopolies, they're making a good that's pretty much identical, or making one that's so close that it's almost considered a perfect substitute. Again, razors, right? I mean, at the end of the day, whenever I'm going to buy razors, it really doesn't matter to me. I just want one that'll cut all that up there. Right, so, okay. Here's where I was telling y'all the book mentions like what it takes to be an oligopoly. So an industry with a concentration ratio above 60%. So in other words, the proportion of total industry output produced by the largest firms. So in other words, if big firms, like the big 3 or 4 firms, produce more than 60% of the output, then it's considered an oligopoly, right? And then down here you have some of the examples, right? Video games, disposable razors, razor blades, cigarettes, baby food, soft drinks, internet browsers, right? You're only going to have a few large firms that are making the majority of these things. I would even almost throw like satellite and cable TV into this category as well, because for the most part, I would say, especially with us, like for the most part, I would say that the majority of us probably only have the option of satellite. That sound about right? I mean, I guess maybe a handful of you might have cable as an option, but pretty much it's either DirecTV or Dish Network. So, which actually the technical term, if you're thinking satellite TV, isn't actually a duopoly, but that doesn't matter for us. Okay, so we're gonna move on. All right, so what can an oligopoly do to increase its market share, right? Or in other words, what can it do to basically, what can it do to get more sales, right? That's really what we're after, right? So what they can do is they can increase quantity and just make more, or they can reduce prices, right? But here's the thing, and let's kind of think about this one for a minute, okay? Because we've already talked about the fact that there's a few large firms. So if they decide to reduce price, what's everyone else going to do?
Reduce price?
So is it really going to do them any good?
Not really.
No, it's not going to help them at all. They can drop the price, but guess what? The second they drop the price, and I'll never forget this, whenever I used to drive to Villa Rica High School every single day. How many of y'all have ever driven to Villa Rica, right? Or at least gone up that way, right, towards Villa Rica and all that stuff. Okay, so, on the way to Villa Rica on 61, you're heading north. And then as you get close to where the cow barn and where the Dodge dealership is, right before that, there's 2 gas stations. There's like a Quick Trip and a racetrack right side by side, right? And it always cracked me up in the mornings, like, because whichever store opened first, Like, and as I was going through, whichever store updated first, right, you would be going by, and one store, it almost never failed, would always be 1 penny less than the other one on the way to work in the morning. But by the time I was on my way home in the afternoon, well, guess what? They're both exactly the same price, right? So these oligopolies, they can reduce the price, but the problem is going to be is everybody's going to match them, right? But here's the other part of it is that they try to increase their sales at the prevailing rate. Well, their product's not different enough. So because of this, and let me see, let me go down one real quick. Okay. Do we want to get here yet? Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I just said. Okay. I'm going to, let me make this bigger so it might be easier to see for you guys. Okay, do y'all see the dotted lines right here? Okay, I'm going to assume y'all say yes because I can't see your faces again, right? These dotted lines do not exist, okay? But here's the thing with an oligopoly, is an oligopoly, technically speaking, faces two different demand curves, right? So if we look right here, the demand curve facing an oligopoly, if rivals don't match price changes, right? So in other words, if an oligopoly decides to decrease its price too much, right, or the second they decrease their price, then the demand for their product is going to become a little bit more elastic as a result, right? But if they decide to match the price, well, then the demand becomes a little inelastic. So the moral of the story here, and I'm not going to really ask you guys to say or do much more with this than this, is to know and understand that an oligopoly has a kinked demand curve. All right, so if you see this part right here, the solid part, this is what the demand curve for an oligopoly is going to look like. And pretty much what this really represents, just for our intents and purposes, is it represents the fact that oligopolies have one of two choices. They can either price the way that the rest of the group is doing it, or they can try to go out on their own and they can price on their own if they want to. They can try it, but it ain't going to work out that great for them. Questions there?
So, like you said, video games
Mm-hmm.
are like an oligopoly.
Mm-hmm.
And so is this the reason why like every video game has cost $60 in the past like 10 years?
Absolutely, because that's the market price, and they agree to it. Now, then, technically speaking, an oligopoly is illegal in the United States. I hope you can see me doing my quote unquotes right there, right? But at the same exact time, it is what it is, right? I mean, they can't outright announce that they are going to do this, that they are going to sit here and they are going to, what do you say? That they're going to set their prices, but they can absolutely signal to the other company what their price is going to be. So like Sony might come out and say, well, we're charging $60. And then Microsoft says, oh, okay, well, you know what? We're going to charge $60 too.
Okay, thanks.
But it would be illegal for them to get together and say and agree that they are both going to charge $60. That's what's called collusion. Did y'all learned about that a little bit last year, correct? In U.S. history? Then y'all are at least somewhat about collusion. No, y'all didn't. Okay, well, anyway, collusion in the United States is illegal. Okay, well, so here you go. You've heard of a cartel before, right? Like a drug cartel, whatever you want to call it, right? Well, a true cartel, what a cartel is pretty much an oligopoly, right? And they're the same exact thing, right? I mean, they get together, they set prices. They call it a cartel. The difference between a cartel and an oligopoly is supposed to act legally, but a cartel actually gets together and they set their prices. And so together, an oligopoly, if everybody, okay, so here's y'all another question. If every company in the entire market is acting together, then what kind of market structure are you really dealing with? Don't be scared. I can't see your face.
Wouldn't it be perfect competition?
It'd be perfect. Other end of the extreme. If all of them are acting together, and they're all acting pretty much as
I don't know what it's called, but I mean, I guess like communistic-ish. I don't really know.
I'm talking about the market structure itself.
I forget the name of it.
2 days ago. Hint.
Monopoly.
Bingo. So, let me see, and hang on, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. Okay, so if we look at this graph, okay, does this look at least somewhat familiar from the other day? I hope. Right, this is the market structure, what a monopolies looks like. But if all of them are acting together, then this is exactly what it would look like. Is it would just be a monopoly, right? And that's why collusion is illegal in the United States. Well, because we don't want them being able to act like a monopoly. Okay, next thing, and here's the part, and again, this was the first thing that I was telling those of you before I started recording, that this one right here will kick your tail if you're not careful. But again, like I said, for our intents and purposes, I just want y'all to know and understand that they have a kinked demand curve. I'm not going to ask you to really give the explanations very far into it, at least anyway. I'm not going to ask you to give me just tons and tons of explanation for that. But the next one is the other tricky part, and it's this. Anybody actually ever seen, there's a movie with Russell Crowe in it called A Beautiful Mind. Have y'all ever seen this movie? Anyone? Oh my goodness, nobody's seen it. Oh, y'all are breaking my hearts. It is such a great movie, by the way. Y'all need to watch this movie. Oh, hang on. Oh, Miss Horn is sending out their remind texts to me. Okay, so anyway, good movie. It's at least worth watching over the break, since we're over this time right now, since y'all really don't have much else to do. It's called A Beautiful Mind. But what you're about to learn right here, game theory, the movie A Beautiful Mind is about the person who pretty much developed this idea, this thought of game theory. Okay, so game theory is kind of an idea that explains why these firms act the way they do. And it kind of gives you an idea of why it is that they price the way they do and why they act the way that they do. So let's kind of take a look at this very first one right here. Okay, so all game theories, or all games, quote unquote, have what is called a payoff matrix. Okay, and this is just kind of an example of one of them. Okay, so right here on the left, and this is how they're always going to be like sorted out or whatever. Let me make that bigger. Okay, so on the left hand side we have this company's options, Universal. Okay, and then on the top we have their rivals. So this is some other company. Okay, so we could technically, if we wanted to, we could say that this is Sony and this is Microsoft. Okay, if we wanted to talk about video games. All right, and so Sony has two options. They have the option to reduce the price of their games or not reduce the price of their games. And then Microsoft, or the rival up here, has the same exact option. They can either reduce the price or they can not reduce the price. So let's take a look at what happens. Okay, so let's just say, and we call it a game because here's what's going to happen. Universal is going to play a strategy, right? They're going to play one of these two strategies. So let's just pretend that they play reduce the price, okay? If they reduce the price and Microsoft reduces the price, well, then what happens to everyone? Both of them take a loss, right? But what happens if this Universal or Sony right here, if they reduce the price and Microsoft right here does not reduce the price, then Universal or Sony in this case, whatever, who cares, right, is going to get a huge gain and the rival is going to lose, right? So in this case, if Universal decides to reduce the price, what's the best course of action for this company right here? What should they do?
Reduce their price.
Bingo, because they're going to be better off. But now let's go down here and let's look at this one. Don't reduce the price, okay? So if Universal does not reduce the price and their rival does reduce their price, well, now Universal is going to have a huge loss, right? And now their rival is going to have a huge gain. So in this case, it's actually better off for them to not reduce the price at all, right? So what's going to be the best outcome for either company is they're both going to wind up reducing the price. Because the second that I don't reduce my price and my competitor does, guess what? I've got a gigantic loss. So the best case scenario right here What is always going to happen in this case is that they're both going to reduce the cost, or they're both going to reduce the price, because there's no possible way for them to better themselves by doing anything else. All right, one more example, and then I'm going to let y'all ask questions, because I know there's got to be questions in this. Okay. When I first learned this, oh gosh, however many years ago, I can't tell you. All right, can y'all see all of this? Can y'all see everything down here at the bottom as well? Or do I need to move it around some? Taking the silence as a yes, we're good. Okay, so this was explained to me as a prisoner's dilemma. Okay, so you kind of imagine this scenario, right? We've got two prisoners. Okay, they've both been busted. They've both been caught red-handed, right? One of them we know for a fact killed somebody. Okay, so we know that 100% fact. We just don't know which one. And so just like in any good cop movie, right, they're going to take both prisoners into two different interrogation rooms, and they're just going to start letting them have it. Right? They're going to tell them, oh, well, your buddy's already talked about it, and they've already said that you're the one who did it, and we need you to confess, or we need you to tell us something, give us something, and if you do something for us, we'll take it easy on you or whatever, right? So everybody's kind of seen this scenario in the movies at least play out somewhat, right? Okay, we've all seen that. All right. So before they go in, though, both of them sit there and say to the other, we are not going to tell them anything, right? We're going to say absolutely nothing, right? So we get in, and prisoner one has two choices, just like prisoner two has two choices. Both of them have the same exact thing. I can confess, and I can tell them everything, or I can just not say a dang thing, right? So if prisoner one confesses, what's prisoner two's best thing that they could possibly do? Just looking at this.
Confess.
If prisoner one confesses and prisoner two says nothing, what happens to prisoner two?
He goes free.
So what's his best choice if prisoner one confesses?
Say nothing.
Say nothing. I ain't saying jack squat.
I thought it was like they're like pinning each other against themselves. Like if one confess and the other confess. Like,
yeah, that's exactly what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to get them to. But in your mind, here's what you got to be sitting here thinking. Okay, so if I go into this and I confess, right, then best case scenario is I get 8 years in prison. Worst case scenario is I get 30 years in prison, right? But if I go in there and I say absolutely nothing, the worst case is I get a year. But the best case is I don't get nothing. So what is my best case no matter what? It doesn't matter. The best thing for me to do no matter what in this case is I ain't saying jack squat. Because if I say nothing, like I said, if prisoner one says nothing, the worst that can happen is they go to prison for 1 year. But if they say nothing and the other person confesses, well, then they're not going anywhere. You're going to get 0 years in prison then. Uh-oh, I did that wrong. Hang on. No, my bad. This one should be 30. And this one should be, no, that was right. And this one should be 0. Okay, apologies. I messed that up. I had it right. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, guys. I had it right to begin with. Oh, what a ding dong. There we go. Yeah. All right, stopping now. Questions? Or does that make sense?
It makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, so here's the thing, though, all right, is if we had another example here, it's not always going to be like in this bottom right-hand corner, okay? What you're always looking for is the only time you have what is called a Nash equilibrium, like right here, okay? The only time you have this is once we find a spot where neither one of the people involved or neither one of the companies involved can make themselves better off by moving away from it. Okay, so let's just say right here, okay? So we say that this is a Nash equilibrium. Let's just, for the sake of it, say that we do. Okay, so both of them are saying nothing. Well, if prisoner one confesses, can they make themselves any better off? Right? If prisoner two is going to say nothing.
No.
No. So that's how we know for a fact we've reached ourselves in equilibrium or a Nash equilibrium, because we know that neither person can be better off as a result of it. So, okay. Cool. This is pretty much what I was talking about earlier, is that that an oligopoly will act like a monopoly as long as everybody will agree to keep the same exact price. But here's the problem. And actually, hang on. You know what? No. Okay, so yeah. This works as long as no one firm cheats on the agreement. You wait and see right now. How many of y'all have like paid attention to the news and seen what Saudi Arabia did recently? Have y'all seen what they've done recently?
You feel like giving a quick explanation?
Yeah. Like, what did they like in terms of their oil production? Anyway, have you seen that?
I have no clue. You feel like explaining it though?
Yeah, I will. Okay, so what Saudi Arabia is, okay, and they are part of, and let's see, y'all have heard of this, correct? The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Okay, so Saudi Arabia is a part of this, and Saudi Arabia is probably, I would imagine, I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine they're probably about to get in some trouble with OPEC, because here recently they flooded the entire world with oil. Not literally, but they put just buttloads of oil out there for sale. Just for, I'm not exactly sure the reasoning behind it, but they did. Right? And as a result, this lowered the price for everyone in the entirety of OPEC. Right? So I would imagine, or at least I can imagine, that it's going to eventually. It hasn't yet, but it's going to eventually. And now they're going to, yeah, because they kind of cheated on the agreement. So anyway, but regardless, as long as all the firms in an oligopoly will actually cooperate, the oligopoly can act just like a monopoly, which is exactly what they want to do. Because let's say this: a monopoly has the largest profits of any market structure. So obviously they would want to. And this could probably go a little bit towards answering y'all's discussion question that y'all have as well, right? Is like, what's the difference between a price maker and a price taker, and what would a firm rather be? Hint, hint. Right? Okay, so this is the same exact thing we looked at the other day. This is technically the graph of a monopoly right here, right? If the oligopoly decides everyone's going to act together, well, then it's going to be a monopoly, right? And that's just all there is to it. Okay, so here's the thing, okay? Two things, okay? Price fixing, which we've kind of already talked about. Again, it's illegal, right? Or it's supposed to be illegal, right? But it's basically whenever companies get together and they say, hey, you know what? We're all selling pretty much exactly the same product. Let's agree that we're all going to sell it for this price. Right, and as long as everybody will just agree to sell it for this price, we're going to be able to make a crap load of profit. Okay, the next one, price leadership, right? Generally speaking, this is going to be done by the dominant firm in the market. Okay. So as of right now, whenever it comes to internet browsers, I don't know which one really is the most popular right now. I don't know which one. Let's just going to pretend that Microsoft is right now. Okay, so in the world of internet browsers, we would say that Microsoft is the dominant firm, and they would be the one that would actually exercise price leadership. And what all this means is that the biggest firm is going to set their price, and then pretty much everybody else has to follow suit. They have to do exactly what the bigger firm did. Okay, that's pretty much all that means. All right. So, what are some of the barriers to entry to an oligopoly? Look, I'm not reading all these to y'all because y'all can just see them, right? But these are some of the things that kind of make it difficult to enter into an oligopoly and serve to keep other companies out. Yeah, stuff we've already talked about. Okay, this is a really cool video, and this is the last thing that I actually have for oligopolies, by the way, too. So let me play this. Oh, darn you. It's about 4 minutes long, so sorry, bear with me, but it's actually pretty interesting.
Why are gas stations always built right next to other gas stations? Why is it that I can drive for a mile without finding a coffee shop and then stumble across 3 on the same corner? Why do grocery stores, auto repair shops, and restaurants always seem to exist in groups instead of being spread evenly throughout a community? While there are several factors that might go into deciding where to place your business, clusters of similar companies can be explained by a very simple story called Hotelling's model of spatial competition. Imagine that you sell ice cream at the beach. Your beach is 1 mile long and you have no competition. Where would you place your cart in order to sell the most product? In the middle. The 1/2 mile walk may be too far for some people at each end of the beach, but your cart serves as many people as possible. One day you show up at work just as your cousin Teddy is arriving at the beach with his own ice cream cart. In fact, he's selling exactly the same type of ice cream as you are. You agree that you will split the beach in half. In order to ensure that customers don't have to walk too far, you set up your cart a 1/4 mile south of the beach center, right in the middle of your territory. Teddy sets up a 1/4 mile north of the center in the middle of Teddy territory. With this agreement, everyone south of you buys ice cream from you. Everyone north of Teddy buys from him, and the 50% of beachgoers in between walk to the closest cart. No one walks more than a 1/4 of a mile, and both vendors sell to half of the beachgoers. Game theorists consider this a socially optimal solution. It minimizes the maximum number of steps any visitor must take in order to reach an ice cream cart. The next day, when you arrive at work, Teddy has set up his cart in the middle of the beach.
Hang on, sorry.
The next day, when you arrive at work, Teddy has set up his... Theorists consider this a socially optimal...
Oh, crap. Okay, sorry. Anyway, all right, I'm going to play the video back here in a second. But whenever you're looking at that point, whenever you have them like a 1/4 of the way through the beach, do you see how one of them could possibly make themselves better off if they moved?
If one of them moved closer to the middle,
Bingo.
they'd have more territory.
Bingo. So will they ever stay where they were? A 1/4 of the way? No, never. Not in a million years. Not happening. Oh, crap. I'm going to fast forward. Hang on. Yeah.
Teddy has set up his cart in the middle of the beach. You return to your location a 1/4 mile south of center and get the 25% of customers to the south of you. Teddy still gets all of the customers north in Teddy territory, but now you split the 25% of people in between the 2 carts. Day 3 of the ice cream wars, you get to the beach early and set up right in the center of Teddy territory, assuming you'll serve the 75% of beachgoers to your south, leaving your cousin to sell to the 25% of customers to the north. When Teddy arrives, he sets up just south of you, stealing all of the southerly customers and leaving you with a small group of people to the north. Not to be outdone, you move 10 paces south of Teddy to regain your customers. When you take a midday break, Teddy shuffles 10 paces south of you and again steals back all the customers to the far end of the beach. Throughout the course of the day, both of you continue to periodically move south towards the bulk of the ice cream buyers until both of you eventually end up at the center of the beach, back to back, each serving 50% of the ice cream hungry beachgoers. At this point, you and your competitive cousin have reached what game theorists call a Nash equilibrium, the point where neither of you can improve your position by deviating from your current strategy. Your original strategy, where you were each a 1/4 mile from the middle of the beach, didn't last because it wasn't a Nash equilibrium. Either of you could move your cart towards the other to sell more ice cream. With both of you now in the center of the beach, you can't reposition your cart closer to your furthest customers without making your current customers worse off. However, you no longer have a socially optimal solution since customers at either end of the beach have to walk further than necessary to get a sweet treat. Think about all the fast food chains, clothing boutiques, or mobile phone kiosks at the mall. Customers may be better served by distributing services throughout a community, but this leaves businesses vulnerable to aggressive competition. In the real world, customers come from more than one direction, and businesses are free to compete with marketing strategies by differentiating their product line and with price cuts. But at the heart of their strategy, companies like to keep their competition as close as possible.
So give me 1 second because I'm about to stop recording this for now.